Hey, what's going on, everybody? Joe Menza here, and I'm on another lunch break, and I thought I'd do a nice winter scene. And this is 10 by 14 arches, 100% cotton paper, and I'm using the medium Ron Ranson hake. So I'm going to just wet the top portion of the paper and work on the sky initially. When you do winter scenes and you want to leave some white behind, it's a good idea to just go down to the horizon line, and then you can leave areas of white, either with dry brush strokes, or it gives you plenty of options. So if you're new to my videos, and you're new to this style of painting, you happen to come on this first, this is fast and loose with a large brush. Not a lot of attention to detail, although in this video there may be more detail than others. Typically a painting's done in less than an hour, sometimes less than a half hour. Right now I am applying ultramarine blue, and my first initial wash is yellow ochre. And now I'm applying ultramarine blue mixed with a little Payne's gray over the top of that in quick little strokes to simulate clouds. Varying it up a little bit, I've added a little more Payne's gray. This will dry back about 30%. So as I was saying, this is sort of a fun, fast and loose, large brush type painting method. Sort of pioneered, I think, by Ron Ranson, which we have a group dedicated on Facebook to, the Ron Ranson group. If you're interested in this style of painting, come on over. We got about 600 members as of the filming of this video. So at this point, I'm just kind of varying things up a little bit while the sky is still wet. I'm coming in with a little more Payne's gray on the brush, and I've added a little bit more, and now I'm starting to put in some foliage for the distant trees. Same sort of sky colors, just so it blends, gives it a little bit of distance. Some of them will be covered up by closer objects. I never really know, because I make these up a lot of times as I go along. Just take something out of my head, maybe see something driving to work or something. So now I'm bringing in a little bit more intensity here. Now, the brush that I'm using, it's a goat hair brush. If you've never seen it, you can order them online, places like eBay. I've seen them on Amazon. You can order them from a few different art stores. And the bristles are made of goat hair, and it's trimmed so you can get a straight edge. And the brush is by Pro Art, and it's named after Ron Ranson. He used this brush quite a bit. It can be quite intimidating at first because of the size of it if you're used to a smaller brush, but really it brings a lot of freedom and expression when you use it, because you're not tied down to doing minor details. You have to paint with an impressionistic point of view. So now I've put in a little bit of a pine tree here. Now I plan on doing some white in addition to leaving white spaces to simulate the snow. So I'm doing this roughly with the idea in mind that I'm going to come back and I'm going to use that white as kind of like the final stage to finishing the scene. Now here's our creek coming by, and if you've noticed, when you see winter scenes and you see creeks and little bodies of water like that, you'll notice that they look almost black in the wintertime, but they still have some reflection in them. So we're going really dark here. I'm using Payne's gray with ultramarine blue again, a little bit of alizarin mixed in just to give it alizarin crimson hue, to give it just that depth. So I want a little narrower as it comes off to the right, and then wider as it goes off the page. This way it looks like it's going, perspective-wise, it looks like it's going back. In this corner here, I'm just adding a little bit of interest, just maybe a little grassy or sort of shaded area, whatever your eye sees, really. I just don't want the eye going to the left of that big chunk of white. We have a river near where I live that runs through many counties, and a lot of my sort of compositions I think I've drawn from driving by these areas. It's always good to like focus in on something. Speaking of focusing in, we're zooming in here and we're looking at the water. And I'm going back to the pine tree here just to kind of broaden that out at the base a bit. I'm not too worried about it because I know I'm going to come back with some snow effects, and then I'm going to come back and darken that. So this is really the layout. You could stop here if you want and just leave the white in the paper. Not right here, but you can stop before the snow is added, and it's just fine. I just happen to like working with white. So I'm going to put another pine tree off to the right here, a little bit larger, a little bit closer. My goal is to have things look somewhat realistic. Not photorealistic, but to be able to do it without getting bogged down in details. Ron Ranson tended to do things even simpler. Just quick strokes, really. His method was simpler, and it's a really great jumping off point. As I've gone along, I've started there, and I've built upon that and some, tips from other artists. And now I've kind of come up with, I think, my own way of getting to where I want to go. Like driving in a car, it's like, what are you going this way for? I got a better way to go. Everybody has their own route that they like to take. Maybe there's a coffee shop on the way and you stop off. Taking a little sprayer bottle. I like to use a little spray and keep things wet and open if I'm going to continue working that area. Sometimes I like the effect that it creates when it causes dripping. Creates a lot of randomness, so the water bottle has really become my friend. 2 different sizes. I use a small sprayer and I use a larger sprayer if I want bigger blobs. And then I'll use a toothbrush and flick, things off of that. It lets the water have its day without fighting it. Just let it flow. Creating a little background, maybe shadowing in the back there, something just to give it a little distance. And I take a little paper towel or my finger sometimes, and if it's too heavy, I'll spread things out. Okay, so now I'm just putting in like a little bit of a shadow or a little dark area underneath the tree here. It's just a little too strong, so I'm just going to dab a little out with the paper towel. And just to make it a little more wintry looking, we'll put a little bare tree in here with no leaves on it. Just in the back here. Just needs a little something in the void, I think. Just a little barren tree here. Using a number 3 rigger, just flicking the brush a little bit. My hand gets a little bit in the way here. And as long as I get a little paint on the brush, I'll just flick in a few little sticks here and there. Put a little something at the base of the tree to kind of anchor it to the ground a little bit. Yeah, put a little scrape with the plastic card just to look like bark or a little light shining maybe. And I'm just taking a little gel pen. I don't know if this will be something that shows later, but just to show you, this is a jelly roll pen, and it has white in it. Really a good pen for putting little white details in. Now I'm just going to throw a couple little birds up here, and this stage is pretty much going to be complete. This is, you can leave this right here if you don't want to do any more. It's definitely perfectly fine. You could leave it the white, but of course I'm going to bring in some white here, and I'm using white gouache, M-gram. It's a little thinner and it shows up pretty bright. I've started to really like the M-gram gouache. And now I'm just going to start filling it in. We're basically going to start snowing on our painting. And if you've left some white behind, it'll just kind of all blend in together. When you look at it from a distance, you won't even really know you used white paint. But it really helps to complete little areas, just nice little touches, I feel. And just a little dry brushing. I'm not using any water really with the gouache. When you use water with gouache, it tends to almost create a gray, and it dries flat, and it just kind of dulls things. So the heavier you go with the straight gouache, the brighter it will look. But it doesn't look right. It ends up drying like a milky tone if you end up mixing it with water. So I use it really straight out of the tube. Neat paint, as they say. I'm just going to give it a little spray with the spray gun and just kind of let that run a little bit, create some neat effects. I just kind of work it until I get to a point where I feel I'm happy with it. I'm not like I'm getting frustrated with working it. I'm enjoying it. And I'm getting it to the point to where I feel it looks realistic to the eye. So up close you can see I'm kind of bringing that down. I'm going to create some little reflections. It's very subtle. It's very subtle. Adding a little bit of green to that white gouache, a little bit of dark green, just to get a subtle reflection of some of the greens in there. Again, with the spray gun, kind of let that run down a little bit. And when you're working with white, you're going to have to allow it to dry if you don't want. You really got to let it dry. This second part here is done on a second lunch time in order to get this painting done. I let it dry overnight. And this way the white is more solid. It doesn't open as easily when you hit it with the water, because otherwise it all starts kind of blending together. So now I'm taking a fan brush. I like the fan brush for this, just because of the way the bristles are and they're a little stiffer. And just, it's easy to overdo this, but I try to create, as you can see here, where the snow would lay on the branches. It's very easy to go overboard and create like a big white blob. The good thing is if you go overboard, you can come back in with some little darker colors underneath the branch and create some shadows, which I feel you have to kind of come back and do anyways. Trying to go for a natural look. Nature is very random, so you want to try to get that random looking effect. So now I'm doing this back tree. As my brush gets a little dry, I'm just kind of sweeping stuff across, looking like it's a little powdery on the lake maybe. So again, just sweeping a little white here and just playing a little bit, looking like things have blown maybe across. They're subtle things, but they're things that are really going to sell the painting to the eye. As I said, you try with this method not to get too caught up in the details, but if you're having fun and you know, it's not, you're not fussing is the point. You don't want to get to a point where you're really struggling and it's like I'm going over and over this. You know, I'm kind of methodically doing what I want to do here. And if I look back and I say it doesn't look right, then I'll come back with something else until I get it right. Kind of like sculpting, I guess. So just working along the bank here, creating a buildup of snow and some shadowing underneath the bank, really defining that edge. That was the fan brush I was showing you. I could have switched back to a different brush, but as long as I have this one, I'm working with the snow. Just keep going with it. So now I'm taking some ultramarine blue and Payne's gray, pretty dark mixture here. After I've allowed it to dry, I don't. In between edits, I'm just cutting out parts that you don't want to see really. But I've taken this dark color now and I'm using it to define the bank. You can see up close here. And the reason I let it dry is because, again, with that mixing of the white, it'll reopen, it'll create a gray. So now I'm coming in with heavier paint and I'm doing this bank. And now it's really starting to define that edge. If you're wondering where I was going with it, this is it. Really gets that. If you stop and you look at a river or a creek in the wintertime, you'll see it's got that black edge to it, and then it's got sort of the ice coming over the edge. Maybe one day I should do a painting where I just use only a fan brush. So now I'm just coming in, I'm going to do a little shading here and there, just where I think shadows or little areas of darkness might be. Some little grassy things in that same corner again, just so there's not too much white in that corner. Just a little bit of blending. Don't really want a hard edge. And again, I gave it some time to dry. Creating a little bit of a shadow or reflection coming down from that tree in the back. Very subtle. If it's too harsh, I blend it in with my finger a little bit. You can dab a tissue with it. Again, just pulling down a little bit more, blending with my finger. Doesn't hurt to get up from your board and walk to the back of the room and take a look at it. So I'm taking that same brush with some of those same colors on there, and now I'm just putting a little shadow underneath the branches just to better define those branches. Sometimes it's a little back and forth thing. I'll come back, I'll put a little more white. The tree's got a little weird shape to it. You can always adjust it. If you go too far with the shadow, you can come back in with a little more white. It'll hide it nicely. It's one of the things I like about using the white. I always know I can come back and we'll throw a little snow on it. Again, just touching a little shadow color. Really helps to define it. The fan brush doesn't really hold a lot of water, a lot really. So you kind of keep going back and touching into your palette. Okay. Same thing on this side, just a little more shadow, and then we'll come in with a little more just a little more white. Sometimes when I have that dark color on there, I'll touch in a few little grass, use up the paint that's on my brush, see where else I can use it at. So now I'll come in with just a little bit more white gouache and just touch up a little bit of those branches a little more delicately this time. Again, as I said, it's easy to overdo this. Before you know, oh, that looks pretty good, that looks pretty good, oh, I went too far. Just turning the brush. Just want to look like the tips of those branches caught some snow. Again, see, you get to a point, it's like now you're losing the shadows that you had, so you got to show some restraint. So now back to the other tree. And that tree in the back, it looks like the snow is weighing it down a little bit. I think I like the one in the foreground a little better. A little bit of dry brushing. And I'm going to go back to this tree back here. It's getting a little faded. Just darken that up a little bit. Maybe add a few more branches. Yeah, it looks a little better. Payne's gray, and some burnt umber, and a little blue. Ultramarine blue. Just a little work at the base there. And now I've got a little white on the brush, and I'm just going to dab in a little white where the snow might collect and build up on the branches. Hopefully this isn't overly complicated for some of the beginner viewers out there. Just have fun with it is all I can say. You know, do what you feel you see in your mind. If you have a photo you're going off of and it helps you, that's so much the better. And just tweaking the riverbank here a little bit. I think it all pays off. You just have to show restraint, not go too far. One thing about a painting is it goes pretty fast. I mean, think about a half hour. This one here, about a half hour. Before you know it, it's over, and you wish you still had, you just wish you could keep going. Now, sometimes the gouache dries back a little bit and it dulls a little bit. And you can tap a little bit more white on top of that and it'll look bright, as you can see here. Let's zoom in. I think that's as much as we're going to do here. You can see the randomness. You can see the snow on the branches, the weight of the snow kind of bringing that down. You can see it looks like the air just blew the snow across that creek. So here it is in the frame. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, subscribing, leaving comments. Have a great day.